I've been hiding something from all of you. Something I've kept hidden for a reason because it's silly, yet important to this particular event. It's time I bared my soul to all of you and told the truth. I am terrified of bugs. I know working in construction should mean a sort of immunity to their presence, but no. If I can see them, I squish them. I move on. If they surprise me, I scream like I've not hit puberty. There is a reason for this, however. Skip this bit if you don't care much for a backstory. It's kind of messed up, though. I was 4 years old when I went camping with my parents up north. It was summer, but the nights were absolutely frigid, camping at the base of the mountains. At night, bugs would try to find a source of warmth to recharge. I wish I could remember where this was. The location eludes me. Anyway, I woke up from a dead sleep hearing a crackling sound right up against my head. I listened for a brief moment, terrified that the trolls or witches in fairy tales had finally found me, come to collect me for behaving poorly. My ear started to tickle and itch. The crackling sound turned into loud buzzing. As I frantically tried to pat and brush my ear, a sharp pain penetrated the ear canal, causing me to scream loud enough to startle a flock of birds out of a tree long before the dawning hours. My parents jolted awake and demanded to know what was wrong, though I couldn't hear them asking since I was screaming myself deaf and being burrowed in one ear. I just kept screaming, "My ear, Mummy! My ear!" My parents wasted no time. We left our tents erect, leaving all our gear at the campsite to rush me to the nearest hospital. Luckily, we were only 20 minutes away from the nearest medical facility. This was long before cell phones was a thing, aside from those bricks that were predominantly used by the military. So while my dad pulled my screaming kid self out of the car, my mum ran inside and alerted the staff of what was going on. Again, luck was on our side. Since I was the only patient they had seen in the last 12 hours, doctors rushed to my side immediately. As the squirming continued in my ear, all I could do was sob myself into blacking out. Apparently my mum had thought it had reached my brain and killed me, so she started sobbing. Dad was yelling, doctor was having staff remove them so he could perform a proper procedure. It was a huge mess. I woke up to my dad sitting next to me, reading a newspaper and having coffee. They told me a cockroach had crawled into my ear and started eating away at my inner ear. They were able to save my hearing, but it took a solid 2 years of constant infections, cleaning, and no swimming to regulate it. My parents refused to teach me how to swim until I was 10. A full 6 years after I had to go to sleep with earplugs in, till I was a freshman in high school. So yeah, I hate bugs and I'm terrified of all of them ever since. Even as a grown-ass man, I avoid walking in grass, lest an evil ladybug lands on my shoe. And yes, I do have a pest control company spray my house regularly. An infestation would be a living hell for me. I know, really lame, but now you know I have my reasons. I'm also terrified of needles, especially the thought of them penetrating my eyes, though I'm sure most people don't care for that either. There's no fun story to that one. I just really hate pinprick pain, and growing up on the Bay Area, having a lookout for hypodermic needles littering public transit, and even the sidewalks, you quickly go from cautious to paranoid. Most natives fear being stabbed by dirty needles more than being mugged. At least if you're mugged, you stand less of a chance of catching an incurable disease, though it's not unheard of. Now that I've gotten that off my chest, it's time to share my recent experience. I got a request from Modesto, put on by someone called Mare. They needed a ride to San Francisco, which is a hell of a drive. Since this request was sent out at 1:03 a.m., I didn't really have to worry about traffic, as long as I got there before 3. The commuters to Sacramento get up ridiculously early and start congesting the highways at about 4 a.m. I take Tesla to Patterson Pass, instead of traveling through the construction on the 580. The back roads are a sense of therapeutic remedy for me, blasting metal to keep me awake. I chose Flub to help stimulate me, since I've been having a lot of trouble sleeping these past few weeks and it's easy to pass out, waking up to your car wrapping a tree like a Christmas drumming. I noticed myself feeling a great sense of relaxation, which is inevitably shattered by a sense of seeing something in the corners of my vision. Tiny flitting flashes that disappear as soon as they appear, causing me to feel a little paranoid. Not awake, just vibrating enough to keep my eyes open with my own nervous tension. I pull up to a dilapidated house on Farmington Road, complete with a leaning barn bordered with windows and doors, along with crude and pedestrian graffiti painting every part of the home within arm's reach. Hey, I'm a Bay Area native, which means I've seen some pretty amazing vandalism, and this particular home displayed works that scream, 16! I'm angry. I will pay cash not to be a virgin anymore. My stare was interrupted by footsteps in a two-set stride, heavy enough to sound like an animal. Naturally, I assume it's my passenger. I look over to greet the sound with, "Murray?" However, it was literally this huge, pale horse walking slowly alongside the barn. I fucking love horses, so I lock my door and jump out to go make friends whilst I wait for Murray. I give an enthusiastic pss 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 pss, extending my hand to show preconceived trust in the beast, which was a huge mistake and the start to one of the scariest nights I've ever been through. The horse, upon closer look, was rail thin. Milky eyes, warped with cataracts, seemed to shift and bounce around in its thinning skull. It was looking directly at me. With rigid strides, it came closer to me, causing me to back up and stumble like blondes in every cheesy horror movie known to man. I wasn't scared of the horse harming me. I was just racked with sheer terror at the very state of its being. Keeping its head locked onto me, it walks its back half to the side of an exposed giant hole on its belly, entrails dragging through the dirt, fluids oozing down the dark intestines, leaving a trail of thick, diseased mud as it advanced. The pale horse stopped slowly as if to say, "Hello, now leave." I sat on the ground soaking in the horrors before me, unable to move, when I heard a loud scream from my phone. Fun fact, the new Cerber app update chimes a blood-curdling scream anytime your passenger is in the car and ready to proceed. Adeline is a sick lady, one of her most endearing and almost anxiety-inducing qualities. Cerber has also added the carpool feature upon update. That proves to be a huge clusterfuck of decision, and I'll get into that in a moment. I slowly get up, one hand out as if my little hand could actually do anything to hold back the creature, backing into my car, never letting my eyes leave the horse until the doors were locked and car shifted into drive. I would like to say now before moving forward that I made a mistake. I didn't check to actually see who was in my car or so much as verify if anything was in my car. I just assumed the app was validation enough. Oops. So of course when I turn my head, I don't see anything. I then made another assumption that perhaps the entity was invisible, and I think we can all agree that it's a good possibility that some entities may be invisible. But if I'm being honest, I kind of hoped the whole night was over, and that it was a sign to rage quit the night. Give me a break, I was tired. I drove in maybe just a moment of silence when I heard my sister say, "James?" I whipped my head around to see a bloody beaten Moloch smiling at me. My body went rigid and iced over, stealing the breath out of my chest before Moloch lunged at me. I closed my eyes and swerved the wheel, letting out a really pathetic yelp of fright, slamming on my brakes and running out of the car. I started towards the almond orchards that littered the side of the road, nuts of large trees spilling something loud with almost flaky noise. I stopped to look around and focus my eyes a bit better, hoping to see what was making that noise. I noted that Moloch wasn't chasing me, so at least I had that going for me. "You've got to be fucking kidding me!" I screamed, realizing the trees were puking different variations of bugs from cockroaches to cicadas, all flying and crawling in large droves in my direction. "Oh, hell no!" I yelled, running deeper into the orchard, which I came to realize was a bad decision. I banked left, made a 180 and darted back to my car. To my luck and relief, no one was there. I look at my phone and it says I'm still en route with a passenger. I feverishly look back to see if anyone was there, and nope. Fucking nothing. "Oh, fucking K, we're playing games, I guess," I said, throwing my car in reverse and nearly backed into something. Behind my car was something that stood 8 feet tall, adorning a deer skull, draped in bloody remains, glowing yellow eyes, pierced through my chest like a light pole. The antlers were covered in shreds of something soft and wet, I didn't need to take any guesses as to what it was. The figure was stitched together with different patches of skin that belonged to every creed you could possibly imagine. From the waist down was hairy haunches rested on 2 giant hooves. Nope. I moved to cancel the ride, but every time I hit the button, it would flash as though I tapped it. But it didn't cancel the ride. Fine. Adios, dude. Claim for all I care. I screamed, throwing up my middle finger and gassing it. I could hear thick, gravelly laughing in my car as if someone was watching me. But I knew better at that point. I gunned it down the road, high beams up and no intention of stopping till I felt in my gut that it was clear. It doesn't end though. Not by a long shot. I noticed that I was in a horrible loop of time where I was covering the same stretch of road. I was trapped. No matter. Even entities have stamina, and I still have plenty of gas. I'll just go until my car dies. After about 5 cycles of the same stretch, something changed. The trees became more smooth. Bulbous knots sat at the middle of the trunks. They seemed to be throbbing and glowing a dull red. As I kept cycling, the knots got bigger. Whilst I was distracted by the trees, I was caught off guard by a slam into my car, causing me to scrape a few trees. Well, scrape isn't the right word. Scrape implies that there was a sharp impact. It wasn't. After hitting a half a dozen trees, my car spun and slammed directly across the street into another tree. A smell of smoke and barbecue pork hung in the air when I came to. I drew in a sharp breath, reeling from the pain. I moved my limb to make sure nothing was broken and realized how quiet everything was. I couldn't even hear my own breath. I looked up to see the light stuffed into what I know was a pregnant tree. Over the hood of my car were the fetuses strewn about, wriggling silently, hence the barbecue smell in the air. I sluggishly fell out of my car and puked all over the side of the road, acquainted with a brand new sharp pain upon landing. What the fuck? I silently spewed, drawing my hands up to my face. Burrowed into my palms, legs, and clothes were hundreds of tiny needles. I looked around, shaking, realizing the ground was covered in thousands more. I shook free as many as I could and huddled myself against the car. I was shaking and now crying. I don't know how to make this end, and was robbed of every ability to do so. I was trapped, and that is probably the scariest thing I've endured the entire evening. I watched helpless as waves of insects formed in front of me into this older lady. She wasn't ugly or haggard, just aged and in a navy blue pantsuit. She walked towards me as I whimpered, wondering what the next bit of bullshit would be. She pulled out a phone, tapped it with one of her little fingers, and pushed the phone into my face.
For he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, for he's a jolly good fellow, which no entity can deny. Happy birthday, Jim.
Adeline cooed through the phone. What? I looked around, and everything had fallen back into its regularly creepy state. I was parked in front of a ruined home, no horse, no needles, no bugs. It was all an illusion. Adeline, I say, clenching through my fury of being pranked, but also by how solid the prank actually was. Thank you, but also fuck you. I blurted out and relaxed on the ground. Adeline, there's a problem, I heard the old lady say. Mari? I mouthed her, not trying to be rude but wanting to make sure. She nodded and wiggled her fingers at me in a cute little hello.
What's wrong?
Adeline asked with concern.
The Wendigo, was that you doing, love?
Or I asked. There was an excruciating pause before Adeline answers.
No, why do you ask?
He was here the night. He rammed into the car during Jim's vision. Should I be concerned, darling?
No, thank you, Mari. The fare for this ride will be on us, but you need to come to HQ immediately.
Right, I'll see you soon. Ta.
Mari said, hanging up.
Jim, would you mind escorting me, honey?
Sure, just no more of that crap, yeah? I said, getting up to my feet.
Of course. I'm a nightmare, darling. It's what I do. I owe Daddy a favor. No hard feelings?
She said, extending her hand to me. I shake it and open the back door for her. She steps in and we head to Adlin's office. I drop Murray off at the building. Sadly, I don't have knowledge of what the fare would have been for her. Adlin paid me directly and paid me a solid $5,000. Murray rushes up and I call Adlin.
Hi, Jim.
Adlin said, pretending I didn't think something was wrong. I take it I'm supposed to mind my own business and scamper off? I ask in mild irritation.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and let it go, I said, proud of myself for taking the mature way out. I'm trying, guys.
That's big of you.
Adlin began with suspicion.
Thanks, Jim. Please call me if you need me.
Yeah, no problem. Addy. I chuckled.
Hush you. Have a good night, Jim.
Adlin hung up. I went ahead and posted up at Park Point Hotel in South San Francisco, which is very close to the airport. My stomach was entirely uneasy, so I didn't feel like coffee or ingesting anything but oxygen in that moment. My body was physically tired from expelling so much mental bandwidth into that weird interaction, and I just felt sore and tired. My next request came from the airport. Thor. No fucking way. Norse god Thor. The Thor. Bullshit. Of course I powerslammed the accept button as fast as I could and made my way over to pickup. Upon arrival, I spotted him. He had long blonde hair and certainly looked like the Marvel version of Thor, but somehow more good-looking than Chris Hemsworth? I didn't know it was possible. But alas. Thor? I asked a little too loud. Yep. Is the back open? Yeah. Do I bother helping you with your bag, or do you have the thing in there? He chuckled and replied, No, but I'll get it myself. Thanks, Jim. Thor hauls his baggage in the back seat and crawls in. You know, Jim, I began as I started making my way to the San Francisco Zoo. I've been reading your stories. Uh-oh, I started, feeling beads of sweat form on my neck. You haven't told anyone, have you? Oh, I've told thousands. I narrate your stories on YouTube, he said, raising an eyebrow with a cheeky smile. Fuck. I panicked internally. I physically was on autopilot driving according to the directions. Don't worry, they love your stories. He belted out in joy. Oh, good, I trailed. The people who believe you just want to work for Cerber. The ones that know you're telling the truth? They're sure you won't be taken seriously enough to cause a mass hysteria. In other words, you're probably safe, Thor said with a reassuring smile. The name I go by these days is Scott. I got it from the Swedish word for to care, to nurture, which is sköta, which looks more similar on paper, really. I found it pretty apt, since naturally I spend quite a lot of my time working with animals between rehabilitation and general care, as well as narrating stories on my channel Nature's Temper, of course. I figured I would spare you the awkward fumbling for information on your passengers and just tell you right off the jump. Who knew Thor would be so thoughtful and polite? I replied, grateful and also kind of humbled by his very courteous forward thinking. Well, actually, I'm not really Thor. I'm Fenrir, he replied somewhat somber. I feel like I've heard that term in an RPG somewhere. Are you feeling generous enough to elaborate? I try matching his hospitable tone and verbiage. I would like that, Jim. You see, for years I've been sorely misunderstood. Scott, Fenrir began. I've been known to be hot under the collar, so to speak. He chuckled at his remark. I volleyed the chuckle, but with ignorance, since I didn't get what was so funny. I just wanted to maintain his relaxing atmosphere that was so rare during my rides. But, you see, I was very strong on equality and firmly believed that you should help others if you are able to do so. You would say that's a fair notion, right? He asked, and I nodded, smiling at how dreamy he was. Oh, I might be gay and in love. What a guy. I was born to be feared, sadly. My father is Loki. I'm sure you've heard of him. And my mother, Agnaboda. Both entities associated with nefarious and evil. Which is pretty harsh if you ask me. They never even spanked me. So I have a hard time believing they're as bad as the legends tell it. However, this would be the torch that started the fire that was supposed to be my demise. Spoiler alert! They failed. We both shared a laugh, and Scott continued to tell his tale. Born a wolf, I was misrepresented, and when I started getting larger and larger, they started considering me dangerous. I'm not dangerous. I'm just protective, and what I protected was nature. Nature means everything to me along with its preservation. I largely kept to myself and my devices of maintaining that preservation and cherishing every moment of it. I was happy. But Scott looked out the window, shook his head and bit down on his lower lip. But despite never causing the assumption that I was to be feared, my cohorts decided to take their ignorance as merit to bridle me as the sign of the end times. There are much better examples of doomsday than a big wolf and his love of nature. To which I nodded, because I could think of 10 people right off the top of my head that would be better suited for that burden. That's really rough. I'm sorry to hear that. So, you're calling yourself Thor as a bit of irony? Oh yeah, that's only part of it. I'll get there. So my family, my own family, decided to ask me to be chained up in bonds made of a cat's footsteps, the breath of a fish, the beard of a woman. Giggles nodded at that because it sounds like something Alistair would say. So they lied and it turns out the chains were made of steel? Nope, Scott continued, shaking his head. These were the real materials. The reason they're so strong is because they're hard to harvest. Hard to obtain also means hard to break. Nope, that's not how any of this works. Transaction declined. It gets better, stay with me. I agreed to these bounds under one condition. That one of them must put their arm in my mouth and, should I be bound, lose that very arm. After much hesitation, which should have really been the deal breaker, Tia finally agreed to offer collateral. Sadly, he lost an arm that day, Scott said with well-earned smugness. If I'm being entirely honest, I was sort of hoping I had the opportunity to dismember someone. So I guess all that's left to ask is, how did you escape? Thor freed me. Huh, no shit. So, he lets you use this account with Cerber? Well, he has no real desire to use it. He's really into humans and insists on emulating them as best as he can. So I just made an account with him, Madeline forged it for me, and boom, I'm mobile. Why did Thor free you? Because Thor is inherently good, holding the same morals as myself. Be the hand accords the isle. Be the one who helps the helpless and implements strength when needed. He just doesn't have the same light on him because he's the son of Odin. Scott added a bit of flair of mockery to that last bit. That wasn't the coolest part though. The part that made him an absolute hero in my mind was the fight he put up for me. He fought through my sister Hel, who was a witch. She was half dead and half alive. I struggle to imagine what that would look like. Mermaid style? What would the bottom half be? Two-Face style? Sounded like an absolute atrocity. Scott continued. He then fought my brother, Jormungandr. He's a giant serpent. By the way, out of all of my siblings, I like to think I was the most normal and docile out of the four. Why me? Why am I burdened with Ragnarok? Ending the world is the last thing I want. All that work, just to destroy it? I'm not even that mad! I wouldn't say that you were normal, Scott. However, even before knowing you, I'd definitely choose the wolf boy over a snake or zombie witch. Honestly, your sister is the very definition of unsettling. Ugh. Right? Scott shouted incredulously. Anyway, Tyr ran away like a coward would. That left Thor with his father Odin. Thor refused to harm his father, but he did a number on my other brother, an 8-legged horse that Odin actually rides. This is all weird. Anyway, when that didn't half Odin, Thor started to turn a sharp rock into himself. Thor harmed himself and bled for my release. cutting his arms, face, and when he raised the rock to his throat, Odin relented and allowed Thor to unbind me. Thor nearly sacrificed himself for me. For that, he became my best friend and confidant. That's really amazing. I struggle to find words to appropriately express how touched I was by the story. Sadly, we arrived at our destination. It was good to meet someone who's familiar with my travels and shares them in a positive way. It takes a true hero to spin negative events into golden opportunity. Something I'm glad no one relies on me for, since I wouldn't want that pressure. Mostly because I'm content at where I'm at. I'm not ashamed to admit I'm just existing for myself. However, I can appreciate what Scott's doing. Well, we're here, Scott. I gotta admit, I'm pretty bummed that this trip's over. Please feel free to book me in the future for private concierge. You're solid, man. Thank you, Jim. I look forward to telling everyone what happened from your viewpoint. Thanks for helping me tell my story, Scott replied, baggage in tow. Oh, Scott, you said you're a wolf? Can I ask you a favor? Scott didn't need to hear the request to know what I was asking for. He tilted his head down with a devious grin, removed his coat, and literally wolfed down. I saw Fenrir, and he is a massive grey wolf with crystal blue eyes, towering larger than a blue whale, which caused me to have to look out my window to see the whole figure. His coat shined with an almost blue hue to it under the pale moonlight, sparkling like silver and sapphire. He let out a thunderous howl before returning to his naked state. I keep forgetting that you don't transition from anything without becoming nude. Science will not allow it. Another duh Jim moment for me. By the way, totally has a six-pack, for the thirsty ones reading or listening. Thanks again, Jim. Be seeing you around, buddy. He dressed back up and heads into the zoo. Without a doubt, he'll be giving great care to whatever needs it inside. I wonder what he eats and in what form he eats it. Not important. I get ready to put out another ready signal, but was interrupted by a call from Adeline. Hey, Adeline, what's up? I asked, throwing my shifter into park.
Hi, Jim. In a few minutes, you're going to get a request from Tim W. I need you to hold off any other rides and leave yourself available exclusively for him. This will be your last passenger for the evening. However, you'll be compensated an additional $5,000 if you follow my instructions.
Okay, no problem. Anything else?
I'll tell you about the Wendigo another time, Jim. Right now, I need you to focus on your upcoming passenger.
Okay, I'll call you tomorrow, Adeline, I said, pretending I wasn't annoyed. Good night. I hung up without giving her a chance to reply. I know it's immature, but I detest being treated like a toddler every time something heavy comes up. What's the worst I can do? Die? Like death means anything. Definitely doesn't mean the end. My request from Tim W. comes from Pleasanton. Address belonging to the hospital. If I've learned anything, it's that requests from the hospitals or labs usually means serious trouble for me. I shook it off, remembering that Adeline made this request a priority, and the likelihood of her knowingly sending me into a hostile situation is pretty low. I pull up to see a man dressed in pajamas and wearing very strange and imposing accessories on his face. Upon pulling up, I realize it's a gas mask covering the lower half of his face. Above the mask sat two stone blue eyes and a small tuft of ashen blonde hair. He wasn't necessarily skinny, but definitely not overweight either. Just a normal-looking dude with a gas mask. He hops into my car and my phone screams, alerting my next location for drop-off. I'm not used to it yet, so it still made me jump. When I saw the destination, my heart leapt into my throat, and my blood chilled to a screeching halt. The destination was my house.